Good evening and welcome to Will's webinar. This evening, I'm really looking forward to having our guest on, a good friend of mine, Andy Ramage, and we're going to be talking about the 5 secrets to lasting motivation, which I'm really looking forward to. So first of all, Andy, thank you for joining us this evening.
Oh no, I'm delighted. This is cool. We're so close. I could almost pop round your house and do this in person, but still.
This is it. I was going to say, it's I think you might be my first ever. Are you my maybe first ever Essex guest? Get people
right.
all over the world, but no, it's really cool, and I'm really looking forward to this. So for those of you that are watching, I've known Andy for a couple of years now, and he's someone that I definitely think's on my wavelength. I mean, we were having a good chat a couple of minutes ago before we kicked off, and it's this chat this evening, and I want to call it a chat rather than a webinar because that's really what it's going to be this evening. Is going to be like just being a fly on a wall in one of our many conversations that we've had on the phone or when we've met up and just spoke about personal development because we both absolutely love it. I know that you absolutely love it, and yeah, we're both very passionate about it. So for people that maybe don't know too much about you, please feel free to elaborate on kind of how you've come into this world, because that's the thing that I always think is really interesting. This isn't the sort of job that you go to school going, I can't wait till I'm older and I become a coach. It just doesn't happen like that. People always have some really interesting, weird and wonderful ways of how they get into the industry. So please, for the guys that maybe aren't familiar, let them know.
Cool. All right. So yeah, I mean, my story starts in this world about 10 years ago. I read a book, like I think many people do, that just leads them in to this path called Awaken the Giant Within by Anthony Robbins, which I'm sure most of your members will know of or have heard of or have read. And that sort of changed everything for me. I was, I think, mid-30s, and I had one of those like slow epiphanies, I think is the best way to describe it. At the time, I was traditionally successful. An oil broker in the city, reached a certain level of success, monetary success that we all seem to aim for. And I had one of those, again, slow epiphanies. I read that book and everything started to change. I started to realize that maybe I had control over my beliefs. I didn't know any of this stuff was possible. Self-help wasn't on my radar. You know, I was a big, tough city broker, didn't need any of that stuff. And this book just appeared. And luckily, I've always read books from the age of 16. I was a professional footballer in my younger days, and even during football, I read books. That doesn't normally happen for footballers, but I've always read books, but never self-development, because I didn't feel that I needed that, right? Because again, I was this sort of go-getter type guy. Anyway, read this book and it just spoke to me. It hit me at the right time in my life, at the right point, and I just went, wow, I had no idea I could control what's going on in my head. And by controlling what's going on in my head, I can control everything around me. And it was just groundbreaking in the sense that over the coming years, I started to train and study. As part of that process, I ended up resigning from that particular job to set up a new brokerage. It gave me the courage and confidence to do that. I also took a break from alcohol, which I would wrap up and suggest that was a huge turning point for me. But it all led from that book, that one book. It just started to get me thinking. It started to make me aware. And that alcohol-free adventure, funnily enough, unlocked this whole new world for me that I would never, you know, again, this is the funny thing about meaning and purpose. I could never have predicted what was going to happen. I just knew I wanted to do something. That book unlocked something within me. I took a break from alcohol, had a massive transformation, lost loads of weight. My business, broking business, which everyone said would fail, ended up being 7 times bigger in half the time because I was consistent in everything that I was doing. I felt amazing. My relationships were great. I was so inspired. I was just like, I want to share this, right? Again, no plan. I just wanted to give it to someone, the experience that I just had. That led to the creation of an organization called OYNB.com, which has now helped over 100,000 people. I mean, we think we've probably inspired 1 million people in truth, which I'm extremely passionate about. That led to a book, the 28-Day Alcohol-Free Challenge, which led to another book, Let's Do This, which we'll talk about later on, led to me going back doing degrees, master's degrees, while still running my busy oil brokerage, which I've only just left about a year ago to do this full time. Then it's led to speaking, how I met Will and all this wonderful stuff, right? So it's just a whistle stop tour of why I'm here, but it was never intentional. It just happened with a book 10 years ago, and I'm still loving it. And I'm just like at the start of this adventure. That's, I think, the most exciting thing.
I love that. Absolutely love that. First of all, guys, there's a slight difference to how we normally. So if you joined us on these webinars before, I had a technical difficulty beforehand. So the official thread post that you would normally post on, any questions that's normally in the Facebook group, unfortunately today isn't working. So normally I say, don't post in the chat box and ask questions in the chat box. Today you can. I'm allowing you to. But what I am going to do very quickly, whilst I think of it, is for anyone that isn't in our Facebook group, I'm just going to post the link to it in there as well, so that you can join the Facebook group. So you're in it for next time. So in that group, we've got about 4,500 people. It's a free group. Full of people that are got an interest in personal development and want to improve themselves. So yeah, that's that. Now I'm going to stop sharing this, so then people have got a slightly bigger view of us. So if you could just do us a favor before we go and do a whole hour of speaking, and he's just sort of introduced himself already. If you could just post in the chat and just let us know if you can hear us okay. I know we both got our dodgy Essex accents, but aside from that, if you can hear us okay, just so that we know that we are operating and working properly, that would be great. Yeah, perfect. So
Got it.
So what I love about what you've just shared, Andy, is that your journey started with a book with Tony Robbins. My book, I've actually lent it out. Normally it sits just there. With a book that I read was The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. But my lightning moment was at UPW with Tony 7 years ago now. So yeah, we've both had life-changing moments as a result of a book, and two because of Tony, right? So
yeah, the main man.
It's really interesting, and also what you mentioned with regards to the sort of the no drinking thing as well. Obviously, you know that I decided to take a break from alcohol. I did. I committed to 12 months, ended up doing nearly 18, had a couple of drinks. And what was really interesting for me now is that back then it was a challenge, because a couple of months ago I reached out to you. I said, do you ever drink now? And we had that conversation. But I decided I had a few drinks because I wanted it to be a choice now rather than a challenge. Whereas before it was a challenge, now it's a choice. And for me, that nuance of difference makes the difference for me. So yeah, no, it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, and it was cool to see you share that story as well, which inspired loads of people. That's the thing about the whole alcohol-free thing. It's really cool when people like yourself take on that challenge and just share it, because it is a challenge. You know, that's the way I view it. It's like, look, it's not preachy. It's like, just try it. And if you feel amazing, keep going.
And that's the thing that amazes me, is when you do it, the benefits that you get to the point where you're like, I don't actually want to drink. That's been my personal experience. But what you said about we've had 100,000 people come through it, but more likely inspired 1 million, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, there are literally dozens of people that have reached out to me and said, because of you or reading your story, I've decided to give it a break for a month, 3 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever. And yeah, that's cool. But this webinar today, I don't want us to sort of go down the alcohol route per se.
Yeah, exactly.
Not there's an issue with that. But what I'm interested in today, because is the way of thinking that enables people to have the break from alcohol. So to keep the motivation. But what's also interesting is, like you said, you're a professional footballer. You've gone into the city. You've been very successful, not only in a career, but then actually going and running your own business in that industry, setting up another business in a completely different industry. So you clearly got a formula. And you hear these sort of things, secret to success and all the rest of it, but you've clearly got a formula. There's something that you do that has enabled you to rise on multiple occasions across multiple industries in multiple disciplines. And that's what I'm really interested in, because and the other thing that I'm really interested in learning about from you is you're not someone that just does it. And what I mean by that is you have gone and studied. You did a master's in positive psychology
and coaching psychology.
And coaching psychology. So you understand it at an academic level as well as an experiential level. So if you were to pick one thing, and I know it's never one thing, but if there was one thing that you would put your success in inverted commas down to, what would you say it is?
It's so hard to say one, but I think, and this is in the sort of secrets in many ways of motivation, I think it's that failure is part of the process, right? I think that's so important, right? Is to get away from this perfectionist mindset that we all seem, so many people, you know, that I work with carry this, we have to be perfect. And if we're not, it's a failure. I'll give up. What's the point? And I've got really comfortable with getting it wrong, because even though it's the classic, if you look at it from the outset, and you know, I've been lucky enough to write books, and OYNB has been a success, and brokerages.
Just on that, I'm going to interrupt you there. You wasn't lucky enough to write books. So because you made that decision, right? You made that decision to go and write the book and do it. It wasn't luck that enabled you to write the book.
No, you're right. But I think more to the point that if you look at it at the moment from the outside, you see all these things and everything looks like it's been a success. Everything I've touched has been a success. That's totally not true, right? There's so much failure in there along the lines that I got really comfortable with getting it wrong. And I actually didn't mind in the end if I could take a few shots. And actually, I was quite tactical with it. For example, I'm sure many of the people listening to this love the idea of creating a new business or a side hustle or doing something different with their life. So I thought, actually, do you know what? I can still be a broker and get really, really organized with my time so that I've got a bit of income coming in and I can start taking a few shots here and there. And it doesn't matter so much if I get a few wrong, which I did. I got loads wrong along the way. It was the same in my football career. When I think back to that, I got released at 18, told I wasn't good enough. I got released again when I was 20, told I wasn't good enough. I still ended up playing in the professional league and scoring in the professional league because I didn't give up, if you know what I mean. So I'd attribute a lot of that to my eventual success, was the ability to be able to take massive knockbacks, because again, something like getting released when you're 18 at football is I can't explain what a big knockback that is. I signed with the club when I was 10 years old. I was always going to be a footballer. You get to 18, you're not good enough, son. That is a massive, massive hammer blow that unfortunately most young men don't come back from, in the sense that that's it, right? They walk away, probably never play football again. So if there's one thing, I think it's that ability to embrace failure as part of the learning process, if you know what I mean.
So I absolutely love that, and in NLP we talk about that there's no such thing as failure, only feedback, and it's interesting. I was listening to something yesterday, and they were talking about their theory on why we want to do well and we don't want to fail a lot of the time is because we're brought up and sort of schooled in a way where we want to do good. If we do good, we get love. So if we do bad, if we fail, we don't get love. And ultimately, one of our sort of driving needs is to be loved and to get recognition and to be accepted. And I thought that was really interesting. But what I want to know is, when you were 18, what was it that you were telling yourself? What was your internal dialogue when you got released at 18 and at 20 that kept you going? Because that's the thing where a lot of people struggle. They hear, well, it's not too bad, but what is it that was going on inside for you that meant that you carried on?
These things are quite, I guess, hard to articulate. All I know is, because my brother repeats the story, when I was 18, I met him afterwards in the pub, funnily enough, as you do, to sort of drown my sorrows. And I was very clear about what I'd said to him and to my management at the time, was that, thank you very much, I appreciate your decision, but I'm going to prove you wrong. Now, where that bit came from, it's hard to define, right? I think there was just that mindset of, I'm not ready to give up yet. You know, just because someone's told me I'm not good enough doesn't define me forever as a person or as a footballer that is not good enough. That's just one knockback. You know, that's one area where it hasn't quite worked in. It doesn't mean to say I can't try again and again and again, which I did. It took me many trials and various clubs to find a club that finally could see at least something. And the truth was, I wasn't that good, right? That is the ultimate truth. I was good at that level, but, you know, I was never going to play for England type of standard. But I had that character to keep coming back. And I think a lot of that comes down to belief, doesn't it? And I didn't learn about this until I read the Anthony Robbins book. That's when it all made sense to me. I was like, right, you know, sometimes you can read something in the present and it sort of makes everything in the past make sense. And it was that belief, oh, right, an event happened to me, this major event in my life, and I had the option to choose what I believed. And luckily, and I do think it was a bit of a luck initially, because it just was the way that maybe I was conditioned by more fluke than judgment at that stage in my life. I chose to believe that that was just one person's opinion. And I chose to believe that I could come back from that. And actually, it's only now when I read Anthony Robbins' book, I went, oh, I've just realized I can use that same methodology for everything in life. I can choose what I want to believe about any given situation. Even if it is a massive failure on the outside, I can choose there's lots of learning within that experience that's going to make me stronger, so that when I come back and try again, I'm a little bit better, and I'm a little bit better. And broaden it again. When other things happen in my life, if, you know, someone tells me I'm not good enough or things go well, you always get to choose what you believe. Once you can get into that, it just changes everything.
I absolutely love that, and where you've got to is basically my own way of thinking. Is that the difference was your belief system of that, yeah, I can do this, and for you, hearing no didn't mean no, that's the end for you. It just meant no, not with you. So no,
yeah,
and you're not going to be playing football with us. You're not going to be playing professional football with us at X club. But that didn't mean that out of all the other clubs that you could go and play professional football with from around the world, that wasn't going to stop you. So,
yeah, exactly. And then that is the same thing as it plays out in business. And I think what happens when you have a few of those experiences, you become a bit armor plated, and you gain a sense of confidence that actually I can go through these things and come out the other side. So then when it happens again, you know, you start to build up momentum, and you can start that at any point in your life. By the way, this is really important. It's not about doing it at 18. It just so happened for me at 18, but it could happen now at 45 or 55 or 65 or 75. It doesn't matter. Like, there's still an opportunity to start doing this work on your beliefs. And the great thing about it is you can test it really quickly. You know, and I think back to public speaking is a brilliant example, right? Which I do a lot of now, which I'm really starting to enjoy. I was absolutely useless off the scale at public speaking because I was so scared of it. It's a classic example of only 2 years ago, I could barely articulate in front of more than 5 people. I just couldn't. I remember the first time we paid a lot of money to get a coach in, right? We said, let's get a speaking coach because I'm so bad. And this guy, it was only 2 of us in the room, me and Ruari, the co-founder of OYNB. He said, right, this is what I want you to talk about, stand up and talk. Bearing in mind, there's 2 people in the room outside of me. It was one of the most embarrassing experiences of my life. I was bright red. Nothing would come out. I stumbled and stuttered, and the guy sort of looked at me and just went, like, he was meant to be he wasn't particularly good that way, right? He didn't exactly show me much encouragement, but he looked at me as if to say, oh, you've got no chance, mate. I think you should find another direction in your life. And now here I am, fast forward, and it really hurt, that stuff, right? And I mean, it hurts when you have to fail like that in public like that as well. And I kept coming back and just doing it a little bit more and a little bit more. Now, you know, I can go and do talks in front of loads of people and really enjoy it. And that's another great example, right? And that happened in my 40s. So it's still going on all the time. It's the same mindset of like training your beliefs to go, do you know what? I can learn from that experience. I'm not going to run away from it. I'm going to come back and do it again. And guess what? It got a little bit easier. It still really hurt, a little bit easier. Then you do it 50 times. And all of a sudden it's like, do you know what? I quite enjoy this now.
Yeah, no, I love that. Absolutely love that. So let's get stuck in. So we already sort of alluded to maybe some of them anyway, but the 5 secrets to lasting motivation.
Yeah, so
I'm curious.
Yeah, so we started with failure. It's part of the process. And just to expand on that, because I just touched on it, what happened was, especially through my work with OYNB, I could constantly see the same pattern, right? This perfectionist mindset, people doing amazing for like 21 days. Say, let's just make it really obvious. Let's say they were drinking every day. They get to 21 days alcohol free. That's massive, right? Bearing in mind, they were drinking every day. I'm using an extreme example, but to get to make the point, they'd get to day 21, they would slip up because they've been socially and psychologically conditioned for the last 20, 30 years to behave in a certain way. And that perfectionist mindset kicks in and it's like, oh, that's it. I've blown it. What the hell? Actually, there's a lady called Janet Povey from the dieting world, nutrition world, who coined the term the what the hell effect, because she noticed the exact same thing with people on diets. They'd do amazingly well for 21 days. They'd have a stray cream cake. What the hell? The diet's blown. I might as well have 10. And then 6 months later, they're back on the diet again, right? Because they've ballooned and put on, 20 pounds or whatever it is. And I could see a similar theme. So what I wanted to try and do was show people that actually failure is part of the process. So I did the research and I found it's called the Stages of Change model, which is a guy called James Prochaska, one of the most famous stages of change model. And at first blush, it sort of feeds the perfectionist mindset because it looks like a circle. So you get in at pre-contemplation when you're not even really thinking about this change, then it's contemplation, and then eventually you change, right? And then it's maintenance, and it looks like a perfect circle. It feeds that mythology of the perfectionist mindset. But if you lift the bonnet and look behind, his research shows smokers, for example, take 4 or 5 times on average around the loop. So it's not a circle, it's a corkscrew of change. Right? This is important. Yeah. So what does that tell us? That tells us failure, slip ups, stumbles, fumbles, it's part of the change process. Like, it's a necessary part for most people. And even that revelation for me was wonderful because that's on average. So for me, it took 50 times before I cracked the alcohol code. Some people, it might take 1. But the point being, whatever change you're trying to make, there is a high possibility you're going to get it wrong. As soon as you get outside your comfort zone, stuff goes wrong, right? But that's where all the growth is. That's where all the learning is. By getting it wrong, you learn how to do it right, if you know what I mean. So I'm really passionate about that side of it because it just takes the pressure off people and it allows people not a mulligan or an opportunity to go, I'm going to tactically fail today because I've got a big event coming up or whatever it is, or I don't want to do the speech or whatever it is. But it allows them just a bit of space just to be in the back of their mind. If they do slip up, oh, it's going to hurt, it's going to be upsetting, but maybe this is part of the process for me. Maybe I can learn from this experience.
Absolutely love that. So just for people that wasn't sure, so Stages of Change by who?
James Prochaska. So it's Prochaska. I think James Prochaska. If you search, or the trans theoretical model is the technical term, but Stages of Change, you'll find it.
Yeah, I love that. I've not heard of that. So that's really interesting. So that's number 1 then. So
yeah,
number 1 is failure is part of the process.
Yes. So and just to build out of that, then one of the next secrets, I think, is to streak with a twist, right? Not to be confused with Naked Twister, which has been confused, but this is streaking with a twist. And this builds on the failure and the perfectionist mindset, right? So this is important because streaking is very motivational. And what I mean by streaking is keeping account of the days that you are doing the task that you're meant to be doing. And the whole streaking thing comes from Jerry Seinfeld. You've probably heard of the great Seinfeld story, which I loved, right? Which was the wonderful comedian. And this is what I love about life, right? When you peel back the layers and you analyze the elite of the elite, Jerry Seinfeld's one of the most, I guess, elite performers in the comedy space there is. The guy is like a $1 billion comedian, right? He doesn't just show up and be naturally funny. He works his ass off at being funny, if you know what I mean. And that's the bit that people miss all the time. They just go, oh, Jerry, so he's naturally so gifted. He's born to be funny. The guy's hilarious. Little do they know, behind the scenes, he's grafting day in and day out to be funny. So by the time he hits the stage, it looks so natural. You just think it's this inbuilt, innate, blessed talent. It's not. He's behind the scenes working. So anyway, he's very famous for the don't break the chain analogy, where he'd try and write a new joke every day. And over time, he'd build up these streaks. So he'd mark an X on his calendar every day. He wrote a new joke. And then he would try not to break the chain, which I love, right? Brilliant mentality. You see it on Headspace. If you've got the meditation app, you keep the streaks. It's quite a common thing. It's a great way to stay motivated. But the secret, I think, baked into the perfectionist mindset is the twist part. And the twist part is what I've just been talking about. Rather than get 21 days in and go, you know, that's motivational in itself, right? I don't want to break the streak. I don't want to break the chain. And then you have a slip and it's like, you know, it's like snakes and ladders mentality. I've got to go all the way back to 0 again, right? That in itself is so deflating. So I get the motivation of keeping streaking, but it's also really demotivating when you break the chain because you sort of feel like you're going back to 0. So what we discovered, very much so through my experience with OYNB beer, was that actually if you add in the twist being you mark it as a blip, but you keep streaking, as it were. So you get to day 21, 21's a slip, so it might be XX, 21X's, day 21 is a 0, if you know what I mean. And then day 23, day 24, day 25. So actually, you then look at it as a monthly total or a quarterly total, or whatever way you want to do it.
I love that.
So you get to the end of your 28 days or your 30 days, and it's like, right, what does my 30 days look like? There's one blip in there, or there's two blips in there. But in reality, right, let's just use the alcohol because it's just an easy example. Or let's just use writing a book, right? Because it's the same sort of thing. You're going to write 250 words a day. In the classic, you get to day 10, you miss a day, and it's like, that's it, I've blown it. I'm never going to write this book. Just mark it as a blip. Show up the next day. It's that back to this thing. Keep showing up, right? And then maybe at the end of the month, there's 2 or 3 days when you didn't write your 250 words, but you've just written thousands and thousands of words, and you're building this really strong habit. It's the same with any change you're trying to make, whether you're trying to save for a house or change your career. Same stuff, right? Try and get it into a streak calculator and then mark the blips. So keep streaking and then look at it as a monthly total. And if you contrast it with where you were, you'll find that there's these massive, massive performance gains, even with the blips, if you know what I mean.
I love that. In the Atomic Habits, James Clear talks about don't fail twice. So like you have your blip and you get back on the horse type thing, which I really love. And the thing I talk about a lot of the time is get back on the wagon. Like the way I imagine it is that if you fall off the wagon, which is a term we've all heard, the wagon is still moving. So the quicker you get back on it, you might have to have a little sprint to get back on, but then you just get back on, you carry on going. And what I'm going to do for everyone that's on the podcast this evening, guys, I'm literally just posting a link now. That's my habit tracker documents. It's one of the resources out of Willpower. Excellent. You will have to click it because when this closes, it will be gone. So you'll have to get it, guys, now. I'm not going to post it into the Make It Happen group, the free group. This is one of my paid resources, but seeing as Andy's talking about it, I've just shared it with you, which is a habit tracker, which you've got 2 different types of monthly calendars, day one and just a date one, where you can go through and you can do exactly that for setting your new habit. So as soon as you're talking about it, I thought I'd share it.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I like trackers. I think they're really important. A part of behavioral change or any goal setting. I think it's good to see that like visceral progress.
Love that. So streak with a twist. Streak with a twist. I'm never going to. I'm never going to be able to think. I'm never going to be able to say that without thinking of playing Naked Twister though. So
I know. I've just created some awful mental image in my head.
Got traumatized for life. No, all good. Perfect. So number 3.
Right, number 3. Let's go. Well, this is interesting. I think, and this again builds on from the streaking with a twist, and what you're fantastic at, Will, is you need a plan. When it comes to motivation, you need a plan. Just assuming, and this is the mistake I think many of us made, I certainly did for years, that you can make a rational decision with that rational part of your brain and then just show up and ta-da, wonderful things will happen, and you'll be forever motivated, and you'll always eat healthily, and you'll always go for a run, and you'll always write 300 words. That's just not reality, right? It just doesn't happen. But so many of us, again, are caught in this loop where we just assume because we've made this rational choice, things will happen. And then we forever get disappointed when we constantly slip up and trip up and fumble. It's like, how did that happen? So you need a plan. And the reason you need a plan is because if you don't have a plan, first and foremost, evolution has a plan for you. Like, we totally overlook evolution's power, right? It didn't just look in the mirror at the specimen before her this morning at Will on myself and go, that's it, my work here is done. Perfection at last, right? Doesn't do that, right? It's ongoing right now. The same forces that have allowed us to show up today in this world are still ongoing, and they are way more powerful than that rational part of your brain, this evolutionary part of your brain, right? And its agenda is usually completely opposed to your lovely rational agenda. Its agenda doesn't care about you looking brilliant in your Speedos in 6 weeks' time, or you writing the book. It doesn't care about any of that. All it cares about is keeping you alive long enough to get your genes into the next generation, or being part of that process. That's it. It's pretty simple. And very often, again, those things are opposed to what you're trying to do, your nice rational ideas. Therefore, if you don't have a really solid plan and you're trying to have a conversation in your head about whether you should or you shouldn't, 99.9% of the time, you lose. Your rational brain loses to that evolutionary brain, and rightly so, right? That part of your brain has been with you since we were a fish, if you know what I mean, right? It's so powerful and instinctual. Unless you can guide it and manage it, you lose. So it's really important to have a plan. And bigger than that, if you don't have a plan, someone else has a plan for you. And what I mean by that is we've all been undone. If you've got kids, by a lost lunchbox, or work needs something of you, or family needs something of you, or friends need something of you. Everyone needs something from you. They're not being mean. That's just life, right? They're going about their own busy lives, but they need stuff from you. And if you don't have a plan, you're not protected from that. You're just at the mercy of everyone else, whim and wish, whether it's the text message or the email or the lunchbox. And before you know it, your best laid intentions just vanish through your fingers. And there's no consistency, and you're not writing your 300 words, or you're not sticking to your spend limit, or you're not transforming your relationship with alcohol, or whatever it is, because you're too busy trying to service everyone else's demands, right? So with a plan, it gives you a bit more strength and structure to say no to certain things, or it gives you a bit of guidance to come back to the things that you need to come back to, right? So you can hold off evolution, you can hold off even other people. And this is where it gets really interesting. If you don't have a plan, foreign microbes in your stomach that are not even part of you, right? So they're alien beings essentially that live in your stomach, in your microbiome. They even have a plan for you. I talk about this in the book. This stuff just blows my mind. So the microbiome that live in your stomach, you've probably heard about that by now. It's becoming quite sort of trendy, and there's a lot of talk about microbiome. But there are these amazing microbes that live in your stomach, and there's trillions of them, absolutely trillions of them. And what they're starting to discover is, because this is really new in terms of the DNA sequencing, is that they can communicate via the vagus nerve with your brain, right? So this is nuts. They're not even part of you, right? This is just stuff that blows my mind. So they can also create the neurotransmitters like serotonin, for example, and dopamine. So they can start to create their own messages, fire them up the vagus nerve, and actually influence your decisions in the present moment. Isn't that fascinating? So I met with a guy called Dr. Cryan, who's the expert in this from Cork University. And at the moment, all the research is showing how they influence our choices of food. So this is what they're always talking about, this microbiome. If your microbiome is over influenced by sugar, right? Unhealthy microbiome, they are sending messages, give me more sugar, give me more sugar, give me more pizza. This is really fascinating to me. It's like, hold on.
Sounds like you've been talking to my microbiomes, Andy. Give me more pizza, give me more sugar.
I've got a direct link to yours. Let's just do an interview with them next time, see what they've got to say. And but what's fascinating about that is, like, who's ordering the pizza? Is it you or these foreign beings in your stomach? And where I'm going with this is that we know, right? Scientifically, we can see that. And when I spoke to Dr. Cryan, he sort of said, look, the research is not there, but it looks like it's going to show that these microbiome can actually start to influence other choices that are going on in your life, whether that could be to have the discipline to save for the house, or the motivation to write your 300 words. Like, it's fascinating. So when you think about it, if you don't have like a solid plan of action, evolution's got a plan for you, other people have got a plan for you, and even aliens that live in your stomach have got a plan for you. So if there's ever a reason to be all over it with your journaling, with the work that you do with Will, your tribes, it's now. It's plan, and then execute. Don't think, because if you start thinking, you get overpowered. Just do it.
So on that note, and I'll happily share sort of my way of thinking as well, but I'm really curious to know, people plan in lots of different ways. People talk about having long-term goals, short-term goals, so on and so forth. How do you plan? What do you do to plan? What's your structure? How do you advise and coach your clients, and obviously yourself in planning?
Yes, in the book, the Let's Do This book, I have a journaling system that I've created that is so ridiculously simple, but it has to be. I think you'll know that yourself. If it's not super easy, people won't use it. And this is not Dear Diary, Adrian Mole, if you know who that is, style diary, confession time. I'm going to lock it away in a little trinket type journaling. This is journaling with intention, on purpose. So my aim every day, and I do this myself every day, I'll show you one of mine in a second, is to connect with who I am on a daily basis, because if you don't do that, you forget, which sounds ridiculous, but it's totally true. If you don't connect with who you really are, your core values on a daily basis, you forget who you are. It's just the way life is set up at the moment.
So, sorry, there's something that's gone in front of the camera. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm just moving that down. Got it.
So for people that might be thinking, well, I am Will Polston, you are Andy Ramage. What do you mean connect with yourself and write who you are? What would be something that you would write and journal in regards to who you are?
Yeah, all right. So it's a really good question. So let's just unpick that a bit. So I do it, it's, again, in the book, it's called the Authentic Self Manifesto, right? And some of this sounds a bit like, is that a bit fluffy? Right, trust me. It's like all of these things, you just got to try it. It's so important. So what I try and connect with who I am, like at that core, right? So I really think about those core beliefs that I hold. For example, I can tell you mine because I write every day. It's pretty simple. I abbreviated it. It was just a big paragraph at one point, but I just challenged myself in the book. It's like, look, if you're at a train station and a really good friend of yours turned up and said, look, I just imagine, right, you've been super successful, you've achieved everything you want to in your life, you've had this really vibrant, healthy life, and that person says to you, look, you've achieved all this stuff in your life, just tell me what I should do with my life, right? And there's a time limit to this, right? You've only got 2 minutes to do it. Just imagine they're rushing off to catch a train. It's one of those sort of questions that can elicit a lot of these values and ideas, and then write whatever comes out. You know, how should I live my life? You know, you're giving this advice, this wonderful advice. Imagine you've had this super successful life. And very often what you find is, especially with the time pressure, it unlocks a few of these like deep held values and beliefs. So after refining that process, mine, for example, is be a leader, be courageous, be mindful, be generous, be kind, be an athlete, be generous, be loved and love. Variations of that, right? So that's sort of it. That's abbreviated it down, you know, having, you know, done the actual sort of brainstorming exercise. And also I like to add in bits that I aspire to, such as be courageous. And then I write that out. So I literally write BA, hero, BA, whatever it is, BA Baracus. It's almost impossible not to write BA Baracus if you write that many BAs, if you know what I'm talking about. So that is what I mean. Part of my journaling process is to list that out. It takes 30 seconds. And when I'm writing those things, I'm connecting with them. When I'm writing smile is another one that I write. I smile, right? It's hard not to smile when you smile. When I'm writing being mindful, I'm thinking about being mindful. When I'm writing be grateful, I'm thinking about how lucky I am and how grateful I am. So that's what I mean. That's boom. I do that every day as best I can. Doesn't always happen every day because life gets in the way. Again, back to the not being perfect thing. I'll pick it up the next day. So yeah, that's what I mean by that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I love that, and I think it's so important to make a decision. You know, I have something called a personal declaration, and it sounds really similar. That's why I'm always curious, because people have different labels that they use for certain things.
It's a similar thing, yeah.
And mine starts, I commit. So I commit to being X, Y, Z, and because it is a decision at the end of the day, isn't it? We have a choice, you know. When like you said, when you read was it Awaken the Giant Within, or Awaken the Giant Within, you said, I realized that I could change my belief system. I had a choice over my belief system all of a sudden, and we have a choice as who we show up. We have a choice whether we're going to be kind, whether we're going to be cruel, whether we're going to be loving, or and yeah, I think that's a really, really powerful distinction that you can make. And if you can make that about yourself and make that decision and show up every day in that way, then yeah, there'll be times when you no doubt think to yourself, I'm gonna, you find yourself not being kind, but then you kind of catch yourself and go back because of your conditioning of doing this every day, I assume.
Yeah, and even for me, things like another one that I say, be afraid and love it. It's one of the be afraid and love it, right? So it's not like never be afraid, because I think that's impossible. Be afraid and love it. And back to the speaking example that I gave earlier, I remember very clearly one of my third or fourth talks in front of a lot of people with the co-founder of OYNB, Ruari. And for me at that stage, because I'm quite introverted, I needed the exact structure of what I was going to say. Ruari is the total opposite. He's totally extrovert, could stand up in front of a bazillion people with no rehearsal and just give it some, right? For me, that would be petrifying. But what I remember is we were about to go on stage and we planned the whole talk, and Ru just turned around to me and said, no, I'm not feeling it. Let's just make it up. as we go along. Right. And to me, that was like, oh my God, that was just, my brain almost exploded behind the scenes, right? But what came into my mind, I'd written it out that morning, right? You know, be afraid and love it. I'd connected with that a few hours earlier, right? And then I thought, actually, in that moment, really quickly, here's an opportunity to like really test myself in the arena, as it were, because I'd already found, you know, connected with who I am at a sort of deeper level. Not that it made it any easier, but I was like, all right, let's do it. And we did it. And the ground didn't swallow me up, and it wasn't a complete failure. And actually, it was one of our best talks ever. So in that moment, that's what I'm talking about. It's so important to do that, because I think when you're connecting with who you are on a daily basis, it makes it a lot easier to make like pressured decisions almost in the moment that keep you true to what it is you're trying to achieve in the world. Otherwise, you do forget. That was back to the point. You sort of forget those really foundational, important things that you hold dearly, whether that's to be kind or generous or whatever. It's just a little reminder, and it keeps you on that true north, as it were.
Yeah, repetition is the mother of skill, as they say, and yeah, so important, so important. I just want to remind everyone, guys, this is interactive. So if you do have any questions that you want to ask, if there's anything that you think, oh yeah, I've got a question about that, or there's something you want us to elaborate on, then for today only, you can use the chat box, ask the questions, and I'll make sure I feed them to Andy. Or if you do obviously have a question for myself, then happy to answer that as well. So yeah, that's all good. So far we've got failure is part of the process, streak with a twist. I can't say that without smiling. And you need a plan. But sorry, before we move on, so I was saying, so when you set goals, how do you set your goals? What's your plan?
Yeah, so we were just talking about that initial bit. So that's connecting with who I am. So that's part of that journaling process that I was talking about. And then I'll draw it for you. It's really simple. I literally this again, it's sort of in the book, but I'll do it while I'm literally talking to you. This is how quick it is, because that's what it looks like. I sort of draw that. You see that okay?
Yeah.
So it's a triangle with a circle on it. That's the moon shot, as it were. I'm just going to write moonshot above it. So I'm going to say, right. So my goal I'm aiming for at the moment is to write third book. Right. I'm just writing that in. So just see it. Right. Third book. This is how I start my journaling every day. I then draw these like metaphorical steps in.
Mm-hmm.
You see those steps going up to the moon, right? So what I'm actually, the metaphor behind that is that you don't get to the moon straight away. It's like looking up at Everest and assuming that you can climb straight to the top. It doesn't work like that. What you actually have to do is climb your 100 meters, your 100 meters, your 100 meters, your 100 meters to get there. So that metaphor is, I don't have to have finished the book tomorrow. All I have to do is write 500 words today. That's it. If I show up and do that enough times, in a few months' time, I have a book. Right? This stuff, like when you break it down, it becomes so much more simpler. So what I do is this, write 500 words.
Brilliant.
Right, so it's so simple. Like you can see, I'm doing it in front of you, right? It's taking me seconds to do that, right? So now, and down the side, just here, I'd write my Authentic Self Manifesto. The BA would all go that side, right? So again, that whole thing's taken me not even a minute probably. But what I've done, I've connected with where I'm going, which is the moonshot, right? My goal is to write the third book, and obviously you could put anything in there. And I've also connected with how I'm going to get there. So I know who I am, where I'm going, and how I'm going to get there is by writing 500 words. So what I also then, the extra little bits of this, I have two questions, an evening question, which says, did I do my best to write 500 words today? And I just mark it out of 10. That's all you have to do. So it's like seconds. This stuff's got to be quick. Can't use 7. Lucky number 7, not allowed. It's just too easy to use 777. 6 or 8 makes you think a bit more. And then based on that score, the next question is every morning is, how can I improve my process? Then you can look at that score, and if that's a 5, why is it a 5? Well, it's a 5 because I only wrote 200 words. It's not a 0 because I wrote words. I just 200. All right, why? Well, actually, I tried to do it lunchtime. It's not a great spot. The world gets in the way. All right, could I try writing my 500 words before the kids are up, before breakfast? Does that work? Constantly, this iteration of constantly trying to improve the process, right? It's not about the goal. It's all about the process. And then obviously, as you refine that process and you get better and better at writing your 500 words, because that's all you have to do, rinse, repeat, streak with the twist, 4 months later or whatever it is, you've got a book. It's done. That's basically the process in a quick nutshell. But any goal goes into that same system, and you can see it takes seconds to do it. Right? That's really important to me.
What do you do in that instance if you have multiple goals? Do you do 2 diagrams? So if you were, I don't know, on a real health kick and drinking was not drinking was one of yours, and exercising and eating well, so they're all sort of similar goals, but they've got that. So I don't know, I'm making it up. Let's say it's exercise every day, eat 80% well, and I don't know, yeah, like not drink for 90 days. Would you do 3 different diagrams, or how do you break that down?
Great question. No, I only do one, right? And here's the thing, I really try and encourage people just to do one thing at a time, because there is that temptation to do everything at once, and there's a bit of conjecture about this, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. My view is do one thing really well for 28 days, like go all in on that one thing and try and get it to a place where it becomes part of who you are, like almost a subconscious routine. So you're just showing up now, writing your 500 words, right? And you know, even if you miss a day, you're going to get back on it because you've done the work on the process. You've got the optimal spot to write your 500 words, which is before breakfast. You know, you've gone through a few iterations, and actually now you're just doing it, right? You're waking up, you're having your cup of coffee, you're writing your 500 words. It's basically running on autopilot. At that point, move on to the next goal. Move on to the next goal, because what I've found is, again, most goals use a bit of willpower at the start. And I think if you're trying, and willpower is like a metaphorical muscle, the more you use it, the quicker it runs out. So I think it makes sense to me, if you're trying to do too many things at once, often you run out of willpower and they'll come tumbling down. That being said, right, there are certain goals that sort of lend themselves to other goals. As you rightly said, for example, it could be they're all around health. So you're actually going to start eating well, and you're going to start moving your body because you're going on this health kick campaign. I'd still advise go all in on one of them and make sure you've absolutely nailed it, and then look at the other one. That being said, what I also do is this. I'm just going to draw it in because I like to do it this way. So they're the stars, right? So you've got the moon and then you've got the stars, right? So this is advanced journaling now, right? This is when I almost don't do that because it's too much, but I like to do that. So my stars would sit off there, and I've got things like that, not even immediate goals, right? So this is the stars for the future. It might have a PhD on there. It might have set up new business on there. Some of those goals that I want to be connected with. And actually a great story, got time for it. This stuff, I do it every day. So before I met Will, I was doing this journaling, and what I did in my stars, it wasn't my focus. I put TED Talk. I just kept putting TED Talk, TED Talk, TED Talk. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't making motions towards the TED Talk. I was just articulating. I was just getting it out there into the universe. It was out of my subconscious onto the paper, but I was doing other things. I was finishing my master's degree, and I was finishing the Let's Do This book. I didn't have time to concentrate on the TED Talk. Anyway, put it out there, wrote it down. I did the Rich Roll podcast, and we got speaking about doing more talking, and I started to articulate this idea of the TED Talk. Will then got in touch with me over Christmas to come and talk at the self-development event of the year, which I loved. And during that talk, someone, Mark, who's a friend of Will's, was watching the talks, and actually then in the summer said, would you come do a TED Talk, TEDx talk, right? But it just shows you. I think that stuff, when you start to get it out into the universe I didn't put any wheels in motion, if you know what I mean. It's only by, fluke.
Power intention. You had the you didn't necessarily how you were going to get it done, but you just said it's happening, and you kind of left it up to the universe, so to speak, to deliver and
to sort of figure it out. So I think that's another important part. Like you said, for me, it's like go all in on one goal, but don't be afraid to sort of have the other ones just around, right? So you're starting to notice the people and the places and the things that you do. That's how the brain works, right? Once you turn your mind onto this stuff, that's what The Secret and all these wonderful things are based on, that same realization that there's so much information in the world. You need a filter system somehow to filter, otherwise your brains would explode, right? Because there's just so much going on. So I think like goals and putting this stuff out into the universe on paper or whatever acts as this sort of subconscious filter system. So you start to suddenly, you notice, it's like that classic case, isn't it? If you're thinking of getting a red Mini, and then all of a sudden you keep seeing these red Minis everywhere. You never really noticed them before. They're now like in your brain. And I think that's what happens. I think that's what The Secret and all these wonderful things are built on. The concept that once you start to think about these things, you do start to see the things that are always there. You're now just filtering out the right type of information that will lead you towards those things.
I love that, and yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure. And I love the advanced version of your journaling with the stars. Really cool. I really like that. Cool. So number four.
I don't know if we've done, I think we may have even sort of strayed into 4, but let's go with motivation is a skill. So I'm conscious we're sort of drawing slightly towards close, but motivation is a skill. And this is really important. I guess this encapsulates everything that I do and that Will does in many ways, is that this stuff is not about some genetic fluke that some people are blessed, endowed with endless motivation and willpower. It's just not the case. I think for the vast majority of people, you can learn to be more motivated, right? Motivation is a skill. And if you get into the skill mindset of whatever it is you're trying to achieve in your life, it changes everything, because it just removes you away from this notion that some people are lucky, they must have lots of willpower or endless motivation, and some people don't. And we normally end up in the I don't camp. I mean, the amount of people that I've sat down with that said to me, I don't have any motivation. I just can't, I just don't have motivation. There's something sort of wrong with me. I'm a bit broken. Everyone else is perfect. I'm like, all right, well, let's just reflect briefly on your past 10, 20 years. What have you achieved in your life? Oh, well, I've run a marathon. I've been really successful in my career, raised a lovely fat family. And I'm like, all right, so stop there. So you've run a marathon, been really successful in your career, and you've raised a lovely family. That takes a shed load of motivation. You can't say that doesn't take a shed load of motivation. So it's not that you don't have motivation, it's just that it's misdirected at the moment, or you can't find the motivation to do these new things that you want to do, whether it's to move your body or transform your diet. So that just lends itself back to, this is a skill. That's why everything I've been talking about ultimately is designed to build that skill of motivation. And it comes from this planning bit, I showed you briefly there about the journaling, that you can just train yourself to get better at motivation. And I think it all comes from a process. And I touched on it earlier. So it's not about the end result. And that's the thing about goal setting, right? You can spend a lot of time trying to achieve your goal, brilliant, and you get there and you go, great. Right, what next? And then it's like, oh, I don't know, right, blank sheet of paper. Let's just start the whole thing again, right? Which can feel like you're going back to point 1. Whereas if you understand there's a process behind it and you keep tweaking the process, like I was talking before, you're thinking about the time slots that you're able to do things. You're thinking about like your nutrition, your sleep, all these wonderful things, right, are all baked into the process of motivation. What happens then, and you get better at the skill of motivation, all you're doing then is dropping goals in to the system. That's the beauty of it, right? So it's not blank sheet of paper every time you finish your goal. You've got a system that you've been working on, you've been nurturing for years, and that's basically what I've been doing. Just drop a goal in, right? That's what I want to achieve. Drop it in the system. Falls in the system. You set up the journaling. You ask the evening question. You ask the morning question. You tweak the process. Try and get it into a subconscious habit. Move on again. Drop another goal in, right? Because you've mastered, or you're mastering, the skill of motivation, because it's a skill, rather than, I think the traditional mindset is, let's just achieve a goal, get to the end of it. What do I do now? I don't know, start again. And you'll see this, right? Classic example is the marathon. Marathon runners all over the land, right, work so hard to put in the hours and the discipline required to run a marathon. And then, like, so typically, because they haven't associated it with a motivational process, it's just a one-off like thing that they're trying to work towards. They run the marathon, that's it. All of that, like, structure, that time they put aside, all of those wonderful sort of routines and that lovely process they put in place just sort of vanishes. So, oh, where did that go? Well, that was part of that goal, therefore that goal's over. That's all wasted. No, you've just created this amazing structure to exercise your body. Of course, you don't have to exercise to that extent all the time, but if you get me, if you viewed it as a process, you would have got to the end of the marathon and gone, brilliant, I've just run a marathon, but I've also got this amazing thing that I can use to build the process of moving my body every day. Maybe it's just to run 5Ks, but you get the idea. I think that's a good example. Yeah, so just to wrap that up, is that motivation is a skill that anyone can learn when you know how. You just need a process. That's what Will gives you effectively. That's what Let's Do This, the book, is all about. Yeah, so hopefully that was helpful.
I think it's massively helpful, massively helpful. And like you say, it's these belief changes. We started the conversation talking about changing beliefs, and I think it's a really great place to bring it in again, of rather than going, I need to be motivated, and just changing that thought process. The motivation is a skill, and like any skill, it takes repetition. You build upon it, you develop it. And then, like you mentioned, you create unconscious habits, so things that then just become the norm. You don't even think about. I always joke with people. I say, what did you do this morning? Like from the moment you woke up, and then say, I got up, got out of bed, had a shower, had some breakfast, left the house, and I go, right, stop there. Okay, so you didn't put in any clothes, you didn't brush your teeth. Oh no, well, of course I did that. It's like, it's just so unconscious. They don't even think about the fact that that was something they did, because it's so normal. And I think that's a really powerful place to get to when you're looking to achieve is creating those habits, for sure.
Yeah, and it's back to that primitive part of our brain. It's so much more powerful than the human part of our brain. So once it's sort of in there at that subconscious layer, it's sort of part of who you are. This is what I talk about a lot. So if you become someone that writes 500 words a day, or you become someone that moves their body, or you become someone that eats a certain way, you don't have to think about it, right? It just runs on this sort of evolutionary subconscious processes. Exactly that, like brushing your teeth. You don't think about it. You just wake up and write your 200 words, or you'll move your body at some point, and if you miss it, you'll move your body the next day. And then you just free up all that lovely mental real estate to think about the new goals and the next things, because it's so important. What I will say is that we have goals, and they do not have to be massive, super duper climbing Everest type goals, but they are your anchor into the future, right? I'm convinced by this. Happiness resides in the struggle to reach some form of goal. That's where happiness is, not in the end result. The end result's fleeting. It's like pleasurable, but it's fleeting. It's gone very quickly. You run your marathon, amazing for a little while, it's all over. But the struggle to get there, that's where all like happiness resides. And if you even look at the brain, I'm just going off on one here, but there's much more mental real estate devoted to the struggle than there is to the pleasure center, right? Because evolution figured it out. Evolution's not stupid, right? It's worked it out. If I need to keep someone motivated to find food, there's a lot of effort got to go in that, right? Because they've got to hunt and they've got to gather, and it could take them days to find food. When they've finally got those berries and they've dropped them into their mouth, yeah, I need to make sure they're pleasurable, but my work is done the second they have those berries in their mouth, right? Because now they're going to survive. So all the effort I need to put into keeping you alive is in the struggle to get there, and just give you a little bit of pleasure at the end. That's a real secret to life, I think, is pleasure, happiness is in the struggle. Therefore, you need something to struggle for, to move towards.
I absolutely love that you've said that. So there's a few things that I'll mention really quickly. So the first thing is that a couple of years ago, I summited, I don't know if you know this, I summited Mont Blanc. And two things that stand out for me. The first thing, and you and I'm sure we both believe in synchronicity, right? There are no coincidences. And I turned up, and obviously I played ice hockey for like most of my life. So whenever I hear Americans, it's a very easy in, or Canadians specifically, it's a very easy in. And there was this old guy, really old guy. It turns out he was 85 years old. And he was sat having a beer, because I was having a beer as well. This is 2017, because I couldn't get into my accommodation. So I'm sat there in the bar having a beer, where I just got to Chamonix, and we got chatting. Anyway, I'd been doing some fact checking about Mont Blanc, and I said, right, I'm summiting. He said, I'm walking around it. I said, right, that's 100 kilometers. That's a long way. And he said, no, it's just one step at a time. I thought, what a brilliant way of thinking. This 85-year-old man was just, and I remember the morning of the summit, we left the Goutier hut at 2:30 in the morning. It's minus 20 Celsius. I'm walking up, it's pitch black. All I can see is a little bit of light just wherever my head torch is working. And I had to, for about 45 minutes straight, just say to myself, one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. And then I got to the top, I summited.
Wow.
It was 7:40 in the morning, there or thereabouts. And remember thinking, this is it. I'm at the summit for 5 minutes, right? And it'll make you laugh. So 2 things that I was really looking forward to at the summit was my Powerade, okay, and my Mars bar. The 2 things I was like, I can't wait to have it. I get to the summit, my Powerade's frozen, so is my Mars bar. Like, no. But as soon as I got to the top, we'd taken a few photos and we're like, right, let's get down. It was like, right, next goal, down. You know, you're having that. And one of the things I talk about, I don't know if you've heard me talk about this or not, but is having a North Star. And the reason I refer to it as a North Star is, for me, as your ultimate goal in life. And the reason I refer to it as a North Star is because, to my knowledge, nobody's ever been to the North Star. But for centuries, for millennium, we've used it as a guiding light. So having that North Star is the equivalent, for me, is trying to empty the sea with a spoon. It's a goal that you're never going to achieve. So you've constantly got that inspiration to strive and wake up every day knowing that it's sort of an unachievable goal, arguably unachievable, but you don't focus your pleasure on the goal. It's on the journey to achieving the goal, right? Which is exactly what you said. The pleasure or the happiness is in the journey, or in the struggle, as you call it, to have the growth and the learning and the development and the becoming, the who you have to become in order to get to that point.
Yeah, it's perfect. And I think that's what we're all looking for, isn't it? That ultimate North Star goal that just is the guiding light, right? That we're never going to get there, you know. And I feel like I've been lucky enough to sort of stumble into some of that with my work that I do around being alcohol free, or even just trying to inspire people. I think there's a real sense of meaning and purpose in helping other people. I'm convinced by that. I think that's a lot of people's North Stars. And when you start to connect with that stuff, it's so powerful, right? Because exactly that, you know, you'll never get there, but it's always going to keep you. That anchor into the future is always there, and it keeps you going, and it gives you that struggle. That's something to wrestle with for the rest of your life. That's the golden ticket.
One last question to round up. And guys, if you have got a question, please type it quickly because we're going to round up in a second. But one last question. What's your North Star? What is the ultimate goal? What for you is the ultimate mission goal for you in life?
Yeah, I think it's very much centered around other people. It's inspiring as many people as I can. I know it sounds a little bit cliche, to ultimately reach their North Star and their best self. And I think it's probably very similar to yourself. When you connect with that, it's really powerful. I mean, obviously I've silos of that, for example, to inspire people to, you know, take a break from alcohol. I think that's a really important thing to me. That will keep me going forever, because that's a battle I will never ever win. I'm pretty sure of that. But that in itself, but that's wrapped up in that bigger picture of just inspiring people that actually they can achieve a bit more than they think, and giving them the opportunity to reach their best life, as it were. I've not articulated that particularly well, but that's the sort of North Star that I have at the moment, and I know I'll never get there, right? And I love being a part of it. I love being on this adventure with you, right? We're both on the exact same adventure in many ways.
Love that. Absolutely love that. So, Andy, for people that have sat there and watched this, or those that are watching this on repeat and going, oh, I love this guy, I really want to find out more about him. Where can people find out about you? Where can and obviously feel free to let them know about both your books. And yeah,
cool. All right. Well, this is the book. Let's do this. Pretty straightforward. It's on Amazon, Waterstones, all those sort of places, which is really cool. So that'd be great if you could pick up a copy of that. And then Andy Ramage Official is Instagram and Facebook, and then also One You Know Beer, Instagram and Facebook. I'm on both of those pretty much every day, live at some point, sharing some sort of wisdom as best I can. So at Andy Ramage Official and at One You Know Beer is where you can see me on the old socials.
Absolutely love that. So thank you very much, Andy. I really do appreciate your time, and yeah, hopefully if you're up for it, we'll get you on the new podcast in the next couple of months or so as a guest on that, if you'd be up for that.
Beautiful.
So yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks again, and thanks everyone listening. Hope you have a lovely evening.
Absolute pleasure. All right. Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much. Everyone's been watching. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll look forward to catching up with you very soon. Until next time, make it happen.